Okay, so maybe very quickly, I'm Radhika, I'm editor at ASAP, which is an online magazine for art writing.
I think you need to hold it a bit closer.
We have with us Bhumika Saraswati, Anna Fox, Samar Hasboon, and Natalia. And I will do a very quick sort of introduction and then maybe go into a conversation between all of them. But Anna Fox is an acclaimed contemporary British photographer and professor of photography at the University of the Creative Arts, where she currently holds an AHRC Impact Award for the project Fast Forward, Women in Photography. Natalia Sharamova is an award-winning photojournalist from Kyiv, Ukraine. She has been leading the photo project Unbowed, Stories of Ukraine, and has also been working as photography mentor for Putting Ourselves in the Picture, Part 2, with Fast Forward, and Anna Fox at the University for the Creative Arts. Samar Hasboon is a Palestinian photographer with a very diverse educational background in photojournalism, international relations, and photo and video therapy. She worked as Middle East photo editor for AFP for 4 years. And has been published by the New York Times, Al Jazeera, the Washington Post, and The Intercept and El Pai. Bhumika Saraswati is an award-winning Indian photographer, filmmaker, and journalist whose work documents lives, narratives, and landscapes that are often overlooked or erased. Raised in a Dalit household by her strong single mother, Geeta, her storytelling is both deeply personal and globally resonant. The project that she examines is the unequal nature of the climate crisis amongst marginalized communities, mostly women in South Asia. So I'll leave it to maybe perhaps Anna, if you could start and tell us something about the project.
Yeah, I'll tell you a little bit about Fast Forward Women in Photography. Started 11 years ago with myself and my colleague Karen Noor, and now our project manager Maria Kapaiva, based in Estonia, and Corinne Whitehouse, based in the UK. So we started to, with the reason that we were educating up to 100% women in our photography classrooms, and yet we still couldn't see that being reflected in the professional world. So we want to reveal the hidden histories of women in photography and bring life and light to them across the globe, hopefully. And we're working with a number of international partners, and they're really important to us. We can't do any of our work on our own. We do research projects, conferences, workshops, publications, exhibitions, and we have a wonderful Instagram called Women in Photo run by Maria. So Putting Ourselves in the Picture is a project that was funded by the Arts and Humanities Research Council in the UK, and it had quite a big grant to start off and to work with 3 groups of women and non-binary refugee and migrant people based in 3 different locations in the UK.
Recording in progress.
Oh, thanks. And the groups were mentored with our partners through Autograph in London, through the National Galleries of Scotland in Edinburgh, through Impressions Gallery in Bradford, and also with the support with the online school work show Grow, based in the UK, and Women for Refugee Women, who are obviously very knowledgeable about things like ethics. So essentially I want to say that I am the organizer of the project. I am also a photographer myself, but my photography is very different to the kind of work that's being done in this project and by these amazing photographers who are speaking today. And what we're trying to do is enable and assist the participants in the project to learn about photography. They were all given cameras, and I think most of them could keep those cameras, which was incredibly useful. And this was in part 1. Natalia, who's there, is in part 2. Basically, it was to enable them to find out what photography could do to help them speak about themselves and their own lives and tell whatever story they wanted to tell. So never mind how the media and journalism is telling these stories in their own particular way, which is very one-sided and very often presenting the refugee and migrant people as victims, which obviously we know they've had terrible times, a lot of them, not all of them, but many, many of them, and they've come from very difficult situations, but they don't need to be presented as victims. they want to tell their own stories in their own way. And that's what putting ourselves in the picture enabled them to do. So Natalia is part of part 2, so we got a second round of funding. Took a bit of a long time to get it, which was a bit of a problem, but in any case, we had to get 3 new groups of people because it took so long to get the funding to work with us. We still worked with the National Galleries of Scotland and with Autograph in London, but Impressions were then too busy by the time we got the grant, so we're now working with Creative Response, which is a group very near our university, which is actually great. And Natalia started working with the group there, which she'd been doing for some time before we started working with her. So the idea is to reveal hidden histories, hidden stories, and particularly for women and non-binary photographers. And you can obviously see the exhibition as soon as you can. So I think you're going to go on to Natalia, is that right?
Yes,
Yes.
I think that would be great. And just speaking also about voice, I think it will be really interesting to hear. Maybe Natalia, could you share with us a little bit about your work?
Hello?
Hello, hi.
I want to ask whether you can see my screen.
No, not yet.
We can see you, but not yours. Are you sharing your slides?
Yeah, I want to share the slideshow just to make it more visible. So you can't see it?
No. Have you shared it?
Can I share my screen?
Yeah? Share your screen.
Yeah, okay, just a minute. Oh, you have it.
Yeah.
Not a perfect, but yeah, better than nothing. I want to tell a bit about the project I started. Thank you, Anna, for inviting me to join the talk, and the project called Unbound Stories of Ukraine, and we started the project in 2022 after the war started in Ukraine, and the full invasion to Ukraine started in 24th of February 2022, and many ladies and children, they left Ukraine, and we met here in Farnham, and all ladies who were impacted by the war were different age group, and it's ladies who are 16, 30s, 40s, 80s, and I was invited to start the sessions in photography for the group. So this quarter we started our sessions, and part of the project is I was teaching group to take photos and to learn how to work with the studio light, with cameras, and all these photos were taken by group members. So it looked like that. We put some background and some studio light which people have donated us. And what we have is here on the right. So every portrait is composed with a story, personal personal story of ladies who left Ukraine. So this lady is Marina, and piece of her story is I lost everything because of the war. I lost my favorite job, my home, all the things that were connected with my past, and then hope. The war burned my soul. I lost hope for the future. I lost faith in people. This lady, she's from the east part of Ukraine, and her house was pawned, so she doesn't have anything now. So this is some photos of our sessions, and yeah, so this is a piece on the right, portrait, and a piece of the story. This is Nina. She is from Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine. My date of birth is 1945, a child of the war. I can never even think they believe what happened on the 24th of February 2022. So we created this project together, and we created not only the project, we created a community where people are accepted, and it was very attended. The first time we made an exhibition in February 2023, and it was very packed with people, and people are very interested in reading stories because they demonstrate what is going on in Ukraine now. Then we were invited to go to other cities, and we did an exhibition in Oxford. And when we were coming to another city, we connected to the local community of Ukrainian ladies, and we joined them. So this lady on the right, she moved to Oxford, and now she is a student of St. John's College. So her words: what do you pack in your backpack when you have 15 minutes to get ready and you may never return to your apartment? Yeah, so this is our first meet with Underfox and Corinne. They came to create a response where our exhibition was in March 2024, and after our productive collaboration, we were a part of Being Human Festival in the university a bit later. This is one more story to the right, and a piece of words. We were woken up by a phone call from my uncle. Get up, the war has begun. The Russians have attacked from Belarus. Vehicles are moving, helicopters are flying. They will be with you soon. My son was sleeping in bed. My child, how? War. I was sick with nerves. In a day we were occupied. There was no way to get out. So this lady, she was near Kyiv, and their city was occupied by Russians, and many people were killed there. As I'm a photojournalist, I return to Kyiv from time to time, and these are some photos just one night, and Kyiv was bombed, and early in the morning I went these stories and taking photos not to forget what is going on and the tragedy of this war which Russia brought to us, and the tragedy of families and children, and many children they lost their childhood. So on the left, this is my children met my husband, and I tried to visit, for children to be able to see that. And this is, I was on the occupied territories after it was liberated. So it's very difficult to see what has been done. And here I just put a map to compare the size of Russia. It is red, and this blue is Ukraine. And when the war started, Russia said it would all Ukraine will be occupied in a few days, but Ukraine has been bravely defending itself for 3 years. The war has become very personal to me. So I just want to share this with you and to say thank you to the UK and the countries that supported us. And so the project about women and their personal experience of being under the impact of the war. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalia. I think there is one sentence there that really seems to resonate and flow into Samar's work, which is in a day we were occupied, there was no way to get out, and Samar's work is about photographing under the occupation, and though there's been an announcement now of a ceasefire, but Samar, would you like to please share with us your stories?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah? Oh, amazing. Perfect. Hello, everyone. Thank you. I just want to say, yes, there has been a ceasefire announced, but that doesn't mean that the war is over. That doesn't mean that the occupation is over. That really doesn't mean much, because there are no guarantees, first. And second of all, because we've seen from last year's prisoner swap that some situations have been repeated. So, for example, many of the people who were released in exchange of the prisoner swap were then a week later or 2 weeks later taken back into prison. Today after this meeting, I will go to photograph one family who is actually waiting. It's a lady, she's waiting for her husband to be released after 21 years of not being with them. And so the fear continues that, I know that you will see images of Palestinians now maybe celebrating and being happy and everything, but really, that does not mean that anything in relation to the occupation is over yet. I want to thank everyone for being here, and I want to speak a little bit about my project. Usually I work either on documentary work or news stuff, or then I do self-portraits and I work with like a more creative and artistic medium. And I was always, photographing around the West Bank. I live in the West Bank. I noticed that the way we are portrayed usually and what works for the news is a little bit different than who we really are and what we look like on a day-to-day basis. And sometimes, because of the industry and because of how things are, because of the consumption of images, we failed to show what the people of the land really look like, and also what that land looks like. And so this project is a collection of images that are, some of them from a few years back, and then I started building up on it. The stories that I'm collecting right now is about people, Palestinians, who are doing something in relation to the land, or the land itself that is either under threat of becoming a settlement and that will be completely erased, lands which we have already lost, people who have lost access to the land. If you know Palestinians, the majority of Palestinians used to be farmers because we used to farm up the land. That is not the case anymore because I would say the majority of them lost access to the land. We also lost access to natural resources. I want to share my screen so I can show you a few images from my project. I think you can see it now. Yeah? Okay. So, this lady is a very special lady. She's someone who created something that's called the Seed Library. She's collecting seeds from Palestine and taking them either abroad to plant them again, because planting in Palestine and anywhere in the world obviously needs a lot of water. We don't have access to water, so we don't have enough water. There is water scarcity. And in the city we live in, I live in Bethlehem, really we suffer from immense lack of water. And so Vivian, because she likes to farm and plant, she doesn't have enough water. And so she decided to build a well. And when she decided to build a well, everybody was saying, that's crazy. Who builds a well in the middle of the city? How can you build a well? And so she took up this project herself to build a well in the middle of the city. And this was the first day when we had some water come into the well. So I went down with her inside the well, and like we swam in the water and she showered. So I took like photos of her inside the well. This was her cleaning the walls of the well. This image is from a project that I was working on because I live near a refugee camp, which was announced to be the most tear-gassed area in the world. So any plant you try to plant there will die eventually because of the tear gas. And this is an image, I don't know why I see this frame here. Okay. And this image is from a lady's garden who keeps replanting the plants. Every single time they die because they are tear gassed, she plants them again, then they grow, then they are tear gassed again, and the story goes on. The next image is of, do you see this green frame that is around the images? I'm not sure if you see it on your screen or not, or if it's just me that I can see it. No. I don't know how to remove it. This image has to do with Palestinian males as well, who are usually represented in a certain way, dark, aggressive, abusers, whatever might you see, loud, screaming, whatever have you, in the mainstream media. And this guy actually is someone who is absolutely not that. And I wanted an image that would really show who he was. And following a conversation, he said, I was doing a meditation one time and it told me that I have power in my hands, that the power in my hands is to go back to the ground, and whenever I touch the ground, I recharge myself. And so we set up this photo in his garden outside his house. This image is of a lady. She is originally from Gaza. This image was not shot in Gaza, but she is one of the people who live it. If you can see, this lady, she lives actually right now with another about 40 something people. All of them live in one, it's like a hotel, like a hostel actually, and they're not allowed to leave this hostel because they face being imprisoned, detained, and sent back to Gaza. Because people who are from Gaza, most of the cases are not allowed to remain in the West Bank and should go back to Gaza. But of course, you know, the situation in Gaza is extremely dangerous. And I took the challenge that day and I said, you know, let's go out, let's just stand outside the hostel and do whatever you feel like doing. And the lady said, oh, I just want to hold a tree. And so we went outside and she held this tree. She was just kind of doing her thing there. And I didn't notice actually that there was an Israeli flag. If you look closely here, there's actually an Israeli flag. And it kind of like catches the irony of the situation. I only noticed the flag later on when I got home and I downloaded the images. These are the women as well who are with that other woman who was holding on to the tree. They decided that they wanted to sit down on the ground and eat their vegetables and just kind of be reminded of what they used to do when they lived in Gaza. And remember, people in Gaza are very much connected to the land. They are people who live by the sea. They love being there. For them, it's like, you know, it's like the air they breathe is completely different. It's all related to nature. And now they don't have access to any of these things. They are actually crammed in a place that they can't even go out for a walk because of how dangerous it is in their lives. And this is inside of one of the rooms where you can also see the connection to the land is so deep. They try to collect as many herbs as they can so that they are reminded of the smell and they can, you know, have access to a little bit of aromas inside the rooms. This image is taken in, it's a valley, it's called the Crimson Valley, and which has been announced a few months ago that it will be taken away from us and it will become under Israeli rule, which means we will no longer have access to this land. This land is actually the last piece of nature that we have in the city of Bethlehem. Once this is gone, we have no more parks, no more trees, nothing. This image was also taken in that piece of land. This girl is from a family who used to live inside Israel, but her family were also deported from the villages that they lived in, so they are internal refugees, displaced refugees. And this is the same area I was telling you about. And if you have a look here at the end of the photo in the background, you can see the settlements. And these settlements are always on the top of the hill. So wherever you go in Palestine, you always see the settlements. They're on top of the hill, and then they start going down and eating up more and more areas. I don't know how much time I still have, but here, this is an image I took in the city of Hebron. Hebron is usually considered a very conservative place, but also here you can see, the man is helping the woman. The woman is actually the breadwinner. She's the one who planted this piece of land and came up with this whole project that is now feeding the whole family, where they plant cauliflower and other vegetables.
Samar, can I please ask
Yeah.
you to perhaps
Tell
maybe
me.
start wrapping up? Yeah. You can.
sorry, I can't hear you. Sound again?
Could I ask you to perhaps wrap up so we could move on to maybe Bhumika if, can you hear? Hello?
Hold it a bit
Yeah,
closer.
it's
Hold
very
it really
low.
close.
Can you hear?
Yeah.
I was wondering if you could perhaps wrap up the presentation so we could move on to Bhumika, if that's maybe take another
Yeah.
few seconds.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to show you, and I'm sure that you can have a look at more of the images as they are hanging on the wall in the exhibition.
Okay, thank you. And I think it's also just thinking about like relation to land, and Bhumika's name, in fact, just for those who don't know, quite literally means earth, but also her work speaks a lot about the relation to land. Maybe Bhumika, can you share?
Sure. Can we also play some of those images if possible?
We can do it from the website, but then it's getting a bit complicated.
Okay, otherwise, I mean, the photos are up at Lalit. But I'll just take up from where Summer and Natalia, what they were saying. I think this is something that, and some of us have had conversations before about, some of this, and I quite agree with Natalia and both Summer as to how we and our communities are looked at. We don't have it here, I've sent it to you. So okay, we can just, not,
Yeah.
We can switch to the next view. Okay, we can just let this one be maybe, and I can. So basically, I mostly document the Dalit and Adivasi community of this country, the community that I also come from, and mostly the way we are represented in news is utterly dehumanizing, and there's only a certain image with which we are associated with. And I closely relate to what Natalia, was saying, and what Summer was saying, that there's a certain imagery associated with Palestinians or war, and so is the case with the Dalit population in this country. There's always a certain imagery associated with how a Dalit should look, how they should dress, what work they should be doing, and that has happened for the last, since photography ever existed, the way our bodies have been, it's almost like extracted from, we photograph it from a certain way, and that's how a Palestinian should look, or that's how a Dalit individual should look, or that's how an Adivasi or an indigenous person should look in many ways. So what my work tries to do is to shift that imagery and be like, no, we don't look like how you assume us to look like. We are full flesh and blood. We are as beautiful as you are, perhaps, or even better, who knows. So a lot of my work has to do with that. So this work is called Unequal Heat, and it's not just about the rising temperatures. So that is where the project began with. In India, this year, last year, the heat waves were intense to a point where 112 people died of rising temperatures. And the news headlines would always be like, oh, 112 people dying of heat, more than 100 people dying of heat. But who are those 100 people? They're not you and me, clearly. So who are those 100 people? What are their names? Who are they? What's their identity? And this entire conversation about, the most vulnerable people in India. And because I'm a journalist, I'm a trained journalist, I go to a lot of these conferences where like, the most vulnerable population. But what does that most vulnerable population look like? Sorry, you can't hear? Okay. Sorry, I'm distracted. No, so a lot of my work has to do with visualizing something that has been, has been erased for a very long period of time, or has been looked at with a certain gaze. So here, so this is Darshana, and oftentimes my people are not even given the dignity of being named who they are in photographs, because we mostly go and capture what we would want to show and come back, and never really credit even what the name of this person is, who is this person really as a whole individual. So a lot of my work has to do with that. So this is Darshana, and right now the fields that you see, because there was intense temperatures, 50 degrees Celsius, there was intense rainfall, and all these are destroyed crops. And then there is conversation in India about, this year we cannot meet our wheat targets, this year the wheat is less, or why is it less? because we haven't protected our own people. And the root cause of that is casteism and patriarchy and all the social evils that exist in our countries today. So if we can also switch to, I don't know how many images you have there, but and while I feel like at this point I've come to a point where I'm able to share my photos with all of you, and in that process I don't want to leave my Adivasi sisters behind. So I try to speak about not just the Dalit community but also the Adivasi community. Right now as we speak, there are about 40 ongoing protests in Chhattisgarh. 40. And I could only visit 3 of them. And even reaching to that terrain is not easy. A lot of these protests are simply against a lot of illegal minings that are happening. And so this entire conversation about land, or what is underneath that land, or who tills that land. When we speak about that in Indian context, oftentimes we forget about the communities that we are speaking about, or who are related to that land in many ways. So this project, the heat, which even though I started with the idea of increasing temperatures, it has now extended to the idea of rage. How for 3,000 years we have been enslaved in a system that is caste, enslaved in a system that is patriarchy. So it's about documenting, my own people in a way that is free of gaze, maybe, in certain way. And there are only a few images here, I wish there were more. But there are a couple. If you go to the show, it's in Lalit Kala right now, there are these photographs where women are wearing winter gloves in 50 degrees Celsius temperature to save themselves from the spikes of the wheat farms. And then you ask, oh, how are 100 people dying of heat? Because you're not considering an entire community human enough to share resources or have those conversations that an individual has to wear those winter gloves in peak summer heat, which is causing to that death. I don't think I shared that sensitive visuals on this website, but if you go, you'll see, if you go to the exhibition, you'll see, and I hate that it's there, but it's there so that you can see it, that there is a woman, her name is Raje, and her back is shot at. She has a bullet wound. And that is also one of India's realities, We oftentimes speak about the war in Ukraine, we speak about war in Palestine, as we should, but what about war back home? What about people being shot at back home? Like, is that not important enough? Maybe these lives are not worthy enough for cameras or international cameras, or to be humanized in many ways. So that is the sort of work that I do, and so that's mostly. There's too much within that also, because and this is what I and Samar were also speaking about when we spoke earlier, that India, we also, if you're having this conversation in India, I think we also need to speak about India's complicity in Palestinian war. And that conversation has to start with all the minings that are happening in central India. Where is the bauxite? Where is the iron coming from? When Adani is sending drones to Palestine, where is it coming from? It is coming from the mine underneath our land. It is coming by displacing us, by dehumanizing our bodies. So in India, which is why I feel like it's very important to contextualize our positionality also, especially in this country, because it's very nice to speak about certain issues from afar, but it's very important to also acknowledge the complexities of the government that exists, or otherwise also. So and in that relation, my work is related to land in that ways, and that we might not own that land, or the very idea of ownership itself. We might not, for example, the data in itself says the Dalit community does not own that much land in this country, but we till that land. The wheat that you eat, we till it. So how is it not our land? And why can't our stories be stories of land? And when we speak about the Adivasi community also, they are the ones who have protected certain trees. And I remember someone was just talking about how, they are trying to save certain seeds and things, there are, because of certain mining projects, entire mountains are gone, and with that, the knowledge systems of which trees exist on those mountains, and how are they different, or how are, the entire way of living is destroyed, if I must use those words. So a lot of my work is about contextualizing it in our context, because I feel that's the real conversation. Otherwise, who are we lying to? So yeah, and we can have the conversation here. Thank you.
No, thank you,
All of you.
Bhumika. That's, I mean, I think one thing that we often in this country in the discourse tend to forget, it's not only that the iron and the bauxite is being sent there, but also that the weapons that are being produced in Israel are being used precisely to murder in exactly Chhattisgarh and in central India, and the most recent case happening in December, right?
Surveillance itself, right? I mean, surveilling of, if you go to Chhattisgarh, you speak to people, they will tell you, oh, there are drones we are fired upon with drones in central Indian forest. We don't have, just the apathy to even accept or listen or read that news. You know, these are, and if you pick them up, you know, and that's the saddest part, even as a photographer, you know, or even as a journalist, when you go to these places, you risk being associated with I don't know who, like, you know, the rebels or whoever, you know, because you're like, oh, how did you see that evidence? You know, that in itself endangers your own life also. But if you really do pick up some of these shells, and in Chhattisgarh, children have died just trying to see what this was, you know, and it was a shell and it blew up, and 2 people, but who cares, because our lives are anyways not worth it, right? I mean, until it's your photography project on our bodies.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, I think there's also this hesitance to say that we are in the midst of a civil war. So, I mean, exactly that while we are speaking of Ukraine and of Palestine and of refugee and migrant communities in the UK, the reality remains that India has very much for a very long period remained in a civil war in various regions. But I think what seems to be really fascinating and what is coming out perhaps between all four, and it would be very interesting for you all to have a conversation, is what does the politics of naming and a relationship with land actually mean to give voice to, because it's also giving voice then to a certain an alternative relationship to land itself, that we are told that our relationship to land has to be one of ownership, it has to be one of profit, it has to be value is considered as not the person creating the value, but the person actually speculating on it. And that may be true also of refugees who belongs to a place, whose voice gets heard. And I wonder if you all would perhaps like to respond to.
I suppose I'd like to sort of put that back onto photography in a sense. Obviously that's a really important question and you know, throughout the whole of time. I think what's significant here by these 3 photographers talking about their work is that they are talking about their own people and their own place. And that's what's very new here today compared to, let's say, 10 years ago, and still not big enough and new enough. And what you're saying is important about land. What I suppose my question would be to the 3 photographers, you know, do you feel that you can use photography to change this, to change people's understanding of all of your different situations? Do you think you can get to the audiences you need to get to, particularly bearing in mind the problems of putting your work in the world? Some of you, not all of you, but some of you.
Should I begin?
Yeah.
Okay. I think, I don't know about others, but I look at my own work as a work for the future, which is a very sad thing. In a way that for a lot of the forests or a lot of the places that I document at the moment, I feel like, even for heat for that matter, like I don't think people right now want to have this conversation or want to listen. You know, but I know 5 years down the lane, 10 years down the lane, people would want to know what did it look like, what did the warmest night of the decade look like for most people, and then I will have visuals, you know, that it's not like we did let it go, some of us were trying to document, you know. And same is the case with the, you know, with the Adivasi population in central India, that currently there are thousands of people who are trying to protect, you know, their land, their forest, their way of living, and they're fighting for it, they're trying, you know. and to even reach to there and photograph that, as evidence. Maybe 10 years down the lane we might want to look at how did we reach here, and then at least we'll have visuals of all the people who tried, and that is how photography as an evidence works for me, that this is what they looked like. These are the people who tried to save this land, who tried to protect this forest, who tried to protest against a certain illegal mine, not even legal mine, illegal mine. And so for me, I feel like even if the work is not valued, doesn't reach, because there's only as much you can do, and also in the current state of affairs we have in our country, I mean, even when we exhibit, we self-censor, I make my work, I make my body palatable for you to see it. There's only one portrayal of a woman who has the bullet shot. I just came back before this, I again came back in Chhattisgarh, and there are children who were shot at. So I have visuals of gun wounds inside, inside the body, and I have CT scans, I'm not sure if I can show them. I'm not sure if I can show them survive and not have police come to my home. So I make my story palatable, for you to even witness it, and I don't know what is the way out, to be honest, so a lot of it just sits in our, as an archive, of a time where we might be able to put out other things, but to document it right now as is also supremely important, because at times when I go to a certain protest sites, and by the time I come back or I next hear from some of my friends in central India, the protest sites is demolished. The people I spoke to are in jail, and I'm like, there will be no evidence of these people otherwise, and some of the times these photographs are used into newspaper archives, into making the case in courts about how, how a certain individual is an activist, and it's not a so-called Maoist or whoever, or a terrorist as they're trying to be portrayed into, So a lot of those visuals work as evidences that are put into newspaper articles and, and are presented in court. So I think we live in a very peculiar time where your visuals, you have to really be careful with them also, but also use them to the best of ways that is possible. And it's honestly very draining, because you feel like it's a very lonely process, and I'm sure even somewhere and I think all of us do feel very lonely in that process, perhaps, because most of the times it's a dehumanizing process, to live in this world knowing all that you know, and to walk and to explain every single thing to every person again and again, because a lot of us just don't do the homework, and some of us end up paying the price for it. In the way we function also, in the way our anxieties live in our bodies, and we photograph, and we archive, and we try to send our footages to friends abroad, or can you save it for the time, can you protect it, can you, so there's a lot that goes under, sorry, I'll let others speak.
Yeah. No, thank you. I think the idea of the photograph actually as like legal evidence that is becoming increasingly used, but also as community memory for a time in the future and not necessarily in the present, because the present can't hold it almost. And I was wondering if perhaps Samar and Natalia, if both of you wanted to say something about how you see your own photographs in terms of what does it mean to photograph your own communities?
Do you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a very good question, Anna, and I think yes, it is very important to tell our stories, and that they come from inside, from the from people who are locally, and as for me, it is also important to collect as many stories as possible to see the bigger picture of the situation and the impact on women and on country in general. As well, for me, it is very interesting to hear about the Samara's stories and photos and to see what is going on in the country. So, yeah.
Thank you, Natalia. Someone, would you like to share something?
Yeah. So for me to answer the question is, I fluctuate a lot between like, how will this project help or not help? Will people see it? Will people be moved by it? Will it change anything on the ground? And I need to always remind myself that it's more about, first of all, creating space for the people to actually know that we are hearing them, we are, listening to their stories and we are documenting it, because one day, who knows, it can be used in some sort of system, court, whatever. But also, more importantly, I just feel like, okay, God gave me this skill. I know how to use this medium. This is my language of showing things and what is happening. I think each one of us has their skill and their talent and their tool to write and educate people. And so I think it's more for me like a responsibility of participating in educating people, but also educating them not only in the mainstream way, educating them in different ways, showing them that, there are different visuals of Palestinians, there are different, ways of being and looking at us and how we are. Because I know, like I Google Palestinians and I see the images that always repeat and that are always the same. And so my role, I feel that I give myself is to be the one who creates those things that, that I would like to see, but that I don't see much of.
Thank you. That's, I think, also for people struggling with, with creative arts, we always wonder what is the use of the immediate use, at least. But I was wondering if maybe we can take a few, if open it up to audience questions for a few minutes. I know we're running a little over time, but maybe if everyone's willing to stay for another 5-7 minutes. Yeah. Any questions? Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead. I think I'll just unmute it.
Oh, it's all turned off.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Bhumika. I'm really moved with your work. Is this clear?
Yes.
Your work is really moving, especially because it speaks to the Indian context and it's not spoken of enough. We're very quick to offer our support to people outside, not so much women. So it really moved me. I've been reading a lot about what Advocacy has been documenting of the same subject.
Who has been documenting?
But of course, yours is a lot more personal as an experience. I was wondering if maybe if we had the time for you to relate a story from one of your journalistic visits to the interior parts, which are usually censored, if it's allowed right now in this space. If we can do that.
That you'd have to ask organizers.
I can tell you about the movements also.
Sorry?
The starting movement, yesterday you talk about one lady leading the movement.
Yeah. If you ask me, I always have much to say. I might not read from one of my pieces at the moment. And that is true because I do come back and I write extensively. and some of these writings I know will not see the light of the day. But I was just yesterday, Palani was there, and another amazing writer from the Dalit community was there, Sumit Sanhosan, and I was pointing to one of the images that's on the left. I don't know if you've seen the Lalit Kala where the work is up. On the left, there is one woman combing another woman's hair, and that woman leads 50,000 women into protest in Gadchiroli. And her husband was arrested, airlifted and arrested. They got a helicopter, picked up her husband, and he's still in jail. And when I photographed this woman, she had come to Delhi to demonstrate, try to raise a point, try to speak about what has happened, and that was just a bit of a tender moment when she was in Delhi with other people, and her husband was arrested, and here was this woman, Adivasi woman leader, and we often assume Dalit and Adivasi people to be the most dumb, demerit, people who do not have brilliance or whatever, which is, often the point of view that people keep reading in books and otherwise. The amount of resilience this one single woman had, whose husband has been arrested and she's here in Delhi, who's on her own, is here, is trying to raise this point. And after that combing of hair, and I have another photo which is not up there, but the beauty with which she gets ready, beautiful sari, her husband is arrested, and that's what we assume. We assume a victim to look a victim in a certain way, right? We assume the Adivasi community, the indigenous community to look a certain way, right? Or a refugee to look a certain way, right? But the brilliance with which she wore that sari and she went out and she spoke truth to power. She spoke about, Lloyd, this company that has been mining, it has received permissions from Gram Sabha, and there are certain visuals that I have where the amount of paperwork women have done to just say one kill, the amount of paperwork, I don't think any of us have done that amount of paperwork in our entire lives. And I think there is a need to speak about that because a lot of times people have the audacity to think that they're better than everybody else when they're not. Everybody has their own role to play and everybody is equally as good as you are. End of sentence, And so the amount of paperwork, the amount of letters they've written to Gram Sabha or to police station saying that this mining does not have the permission of the Gram Sabha, does not have the permission of our villages collectively, and is still continuing to be mining is, I just feel like if I can't do anything, I can at least document it, and that is the bare minimum that I can do, is bear witness. I feel like some of our communities are not allowed to be, they're not allowed to bear witness also. Like, they're not allowed to see also.
I have one follow-up question, if I'm allowed. I think the scariest part in doing what you do is the people you go up against are often the ones who sponsor art events.
So,
It can be a bit tricky. I hope I'm not stepping on your toes here, but this is something I struggle with as well. People we go up against when we talk truth to power are often the people who fund the art events, and that puts a tape over our mouths so many times. And I know that some of the names that you have skipped mentioning right now, some of them even fund some of the largest lit fests in our country, who also owns new lines.
Of course, there's no denying, I don't think there's any denying
and
to
it's
it.
so hard to then be on that panel and speak it. I don't know, do you get scared?
They don't come to my house and, make food for me, so I don't, party,
Has it gotten to the head of your funding at any point?
Dude, I've had police come to my home every, I don't speak about it because I make other younger people scared.
Right.
So I don't speak about it. I don't speak about the upside. But we do what we do. And because somebody has to do it also. So, no, we don't take all this one. But no, we all pay the price of the things that we do, right? And we also choose where we let our work travel. I'm pretty picky that way. And so A lot of the times, I don't present my work in India because I can't. Nobody wants to have these conversations. I don't want Jindal to fund it, or whatever. So, and as far as the funding in itself is concerned, a lot of the work is independent. I put in my own money, I go, I do it. Because if I were in that place, I would want somebody else to document it. I would want, and I just do what I would want if I were in that place. If I were the one who was writing all these letters, documenting it, trying to save that one mountain, or trying to still sow land and do all the work even in the heat, I would want somebody else to at least register me in history, And I know nobody else is going to do it, or especially nobody from the oppressor community is going to do it as diligently as I perhaps can do it. So I go the extra mile and I do that work. And we all pay our prices, and we all pay different prices for it. I'm sure you pay your own price of doing whatever you do. We all pay a price in different ways, perhaps.
Thank you.
Any, yeah, yes.
First of all, thank you for showing all your works. And this is a question actually to all three of you, because like it has been said before, you've all been working in your own communities or within a field that you're personally involved in, however you want to call it. And this question, I think personally I haven't found a definite answer to it, so I'm very curious to hear what you think. Is it something you would advocate for, that like the majority of the world, or that we mainly get to see images or stories from people within a community? Or do you think there is a benefit to, let's say, like classic photojournalism, or let's even call it maybe sometimes superficial imagery that's recreating stereotypes? Yeah, what's your opinion on that?
Sorry, can you repeat? Sorry.
Repeat the question. So you have all been working within your own communities, right? And I completely agree that we need these kind of stories, and that it's very important to shift how we perceive communities, individuals, stories, because a lot has been done, or at least I'm from Germany, and a lot of the images and stories that we have been seeing were made by white people going out into the world and, explaining it for us. But of course, there's always a big part missing. So the question is, would you advocate, would you say we should only have stories from within communities? Or do you think there's also a benefit of people going and doing stories even though they're not personally involved in something?
Maybe you
That's-
can ask.
It's more difficult, isn't it, for them
Samar
to speak?
and Natalia would. Yeah, Samar.
Yeah.
Please.
Can I answer?
Yeah.
So for me, I think I'm not opposed to white people telling stories from my community. On the contrary, I want them to, because I know that sometimes certain people will only listen to certain people. So it's okay, and it's needed, and they have a different perspective on things, and that is welcome too. But sometimes in conservative places, you cannot get a white male photojournalist to get into the domestic sphere, for example, in Palestine. So he will not get access to women and women's stories. And so again, women will continue to look a certain way, their stories will continue to be specific stories, etc., etc. So there are limitations. Language limitations are also present. Sometimes I see when some journalists have stories and interviews translated to them, a lot gets lost in translation. So I feel that, I don't think there's yes, it's only people from the communities should tell the stories, or no. I love diversity, and diversity applies to us and to them and to everyone. So I feel like it's all welcome, but then again, let that diversity apply to all and not just to specific people.
Natalia, would you like to say something?
Sorry, did you say something to me?
No, someone was saying thank you for that, but I was asking Natalia if she would like to respond to the question.
I think you need to be louder.
Natalia, can you hear?
Can you repeat the question?
So the question was how do you feel about other people documenting stories from within your community, like people who are not from the community?
Yeah, I see what you mean. I think it is important our storytelling is if it comes from the community, from inside, because there are some benefits of here. We can show something that other people can't see, is temporary, so we can see the problem bigger. But as well, it is important if there is outside view, and also there is somebody can have access in some places other people don't have. So, in my view, both are important, but there are different. It is nice to compare. It is nice to see different views, put them together. For instance, in Ukraine, there are some territories which are under occupation, and I know my friends were there to watch the situation, and they were under special hunting because of the danger of them to show the world what is going in their territories. Yeah, so I think we should show what is going on and share stories as much as possible.
That's right.
Thank you, Natalia. And someone, and to add to that, and to answer that from my positionality, if I talk about Chhattisgarh, they really do want people to come and document, you know. There's no denying. The situation is so bad that anybody would be welcomed, you know. My only contention is that I truly think that the intent matters, the intent with which you document. And I say this because as a Dalit person, I've been on both sides. I have been a lot of people's stories, oh, this young Dalit person is doing so well in life, let's include her into our research papers. I've been in a lot of people's research papers that way, you know. And I know what extracting from my body feels like. You know what I mean? So, and that is something that I would not want to do to another individual. You know, and it is not something that only an oppressor can do, or somebody from your own community can also be extracted, you know. But when I have to, you know, so I think intent really matters in that case, you know, like not just extracting and building a project out of an entire community, but what are you doing with it and after it? Because living in this country and, you know, coming from certain identities, there is only as much that I can do, you know, but I feel like somebody who's not from this country might be able to amplify it a little more, you know, or be able to support me or other people, or do it themselves also, like, you know, like at this point you just want some of those stories to go out. But as far as, for example, the conversation about the Dalit community has been, our immediate oppressors has not been the white. Our immediate oppressors have been the oppressor caste individuals, oppressor caste male of this very country, you know, and the way they have documented us. And that is a documentation that we are opposed to. We don't look like that. we are not, if you Google heat wave, if you Google Dalit woman, the amount of dehumanizing visuals you will see is, and if you Google work by Parani who's sitting here, for example, you know, somebody who's from the community who has invested time and resources in documenting their own community with care and intent and put those visuals outside, you just see, you know, the difference. But if a well-intended person, from whichever community is putting in that labor and effort, that also shows. It always shows, I feel like, you know, it always shows in your work. You cannot hide it. It'll be bad, it won't be good if you are doing it as extractive, it'll show it's extractive, you know. To me it shows, I mean, I don't know about it.
Can I say something that it's been a long time coming that we've been listening to the inside communities. It's pretty recent. In fact, when we started Fast Forward, we calculated that the biggest photo agency in the world was something like 99% white male. I think they had 5 full-time women members. They now have, 5%. They now have 19%, so it's changed a little bit. But, you know, we must just keep listening and we must keep our eyes open for the insider view. And I think it's very dignified for all of you to accept the outsider view because it's been there for far too long. And I agree, though, it is important. And I think there should be the conversations going on between the insiders and the outsiders. Sometimes the outsiders can't even get in, so... But there are some really good photojournalists out there in the world whose work I really admire.
Yeah,
And then
May I ask
shows.
a follow-up question?
yes.
It's a quick one. Do you think you're gonna stay within your community work? Like, do you think you will continue just making stories from within your community and within that topic and within those fields of interest? Or do you think you will change somewhere?
Yeah, please.
Can I start by answering that? I would love to photograph you in your community, you let me. I would love to do a project on Germans, let's just face it. When are you inviting me, you know?
Maybe Goethe Institute can.
I mean, a lot of us are, you know, no, I mean, you know, it's not like we like to work on our communities, but it's been done so wrongly for so long that we are forced to work in our communities because nobody else is doing that work. If given the chance, I'd love to come to your home and photograph, you know. I mean, why would we want to just photograph our communities? We are, as photographers, as art practitioners, we are capable of photographing anything under the sun as long as it's light and time. The two things that we need to photograph, right? I mean, and we want to photograph everything, good and bad, you know. And like I've had a very nice moment where I've had the opportunity to work with Andrea Bruce. She's a photojournalist from the US, and she just said a very beautiful thing once to me. She was like, I can't wait for you to come and photograph us because I want to see what it looks like. You know? And we are not given that opportunity, but even if you're not given, we'll just, I am one of those people, I know what I will come to your home and shoot you down.
Would Samar and Natalia, would you want to add to that, or? Samar's lost. Yeah. Natalia, is that?
I don't think she can hear us.
Natalia, can you hear?
I missed a bit the question. Can you repeat, please?
So the question was, would you like to document a community that is outside of your own?
Well, I think I rather meant it in a way of, like, did you make a decision to only produce work from within your community? Can you, and I mean, like you pointed out, sometimes you can't even make a conscious decision about that. Yeah, like, basically, what are your future plans? What do you want to work on that way?
Okay. Thank you for questions. And I think the main thing of storytelling and about doing some projects, it's not stories for story's sake, but if we see something which is important to talk about, when we are going through something which we want others to know, or what we want to lighten. So for me, projects are not because I want to do a project, it is more what I see and what is bothering me. So the next project which Anna shared a bit, we are doing together, and I'm working now on the photo project making invisible visible. So it's more what is going on inside of us, and to show more of more invisible part of our lives, and there are different stories of women here. So because we have this community, and I see what is going on inside of the community and in lives of people who moved to Britain, and it's not an easy to start a new life when you're 78 and or if you lost everything. So I want to show a bit more of inside of our community.
To add to that, now if I've got the question right. So now something very interesting has started to happen, that I get a lot of invites, a lot of emails about, can you come and document us? You know? And sometimes I don't know the language, but I love the language because I don't want to say no. Like, you know, somebody has trusted me to allow me in their space. So a lot of projects, for example, I'm also going to deliver some lectures in the US, you know, next month, and I've been invited by the Black community to document heat, and so I'm doing a Dalit and Blacks, you know, thing, you know, in the US right now. So it's, and of course, we would want to do all sorts of projects. I would want to do scandalous projects on sex and, you know, I would want to do parody projects around how health system has such great heights in our country. I would love to do parody projects. I would love to do fantasy projects, you know. But what is allowed with me also is something that comes into play. Is what I feel. You know, a lot of us who are from certain communities are also tried to put into a box that needs to be checked. You know, oh, you're a Dalit person, and oh, you're a Dalit person, we need another Dalit person, let's have you. You know, and that has happened to us a lot of times. You know, but we are of course beyond that, and we also want to do projects about parody, love, about sex, about scams, you know, anything, parody projects, fantasy projects, you know, and we'll do it all. You know, I don't think the first work that comes out is also the most important and urgent one, but our brains work in beautiful ways, right? I mean, we're all capable of all the other projects, and we try to do those as well. We just don't know when they will see the light of the day, but yeah, but I do fantasy projects also, they just don't get attention, you know. if that helps, yeah. For the sake of your moment.
I think we could really go on for a few more hours, but yeah, we should stop. But I mean, I think one thing that is coming out is it's not a sense of like only looking inward, and if the sense that I'm getting from this conversation is it's also to build solidarities across communities and to speak to one another and to learn from one another, and that's something that's quite beautiful about the way that Images does it. And helps us do that. But yeah, thank you really for wonderful work and time, Anna, Bhumika, Natalia, Samar, and for all of you for being here, and to CPB for organizing this.